Hello, and welcome to another episode of Speculative Speculations. I'm Varsha.
I'm Steve.
Chris.
And I.
And this is a series where we talk about speculative stories in all their forms. This episode will go out at about the time that it's the 1-year anniversary of Speculative Speculations. So we thought it would be a good time to take a look at the 11 odd books that we read throughout the year and pick our favorites, discuss our favorites. And Chris wants to tell me why my favorites are wrong.
Yeah. I don't even know what they are, but they're undoubtedly going to be wrong. That's fine.
So we read 11 books, including the short story collection by Ted Chiang, and each of us have picked up to 3 favorites from that list. And we also read a number of short stories that I did not count, but I think were somewhere on the 30-35 mark, including, again, the Ted Chiang collection. So we will also talk about our favorite short stories as we go around. We'll probably do one book each, then another, and then short stories, whatever. We'll figure out the order in which to do this. But just to remind everybody of the books that we're choosing from, we read the Southern Reach trilogy while it was still a trilogy. We haven't read Absolution yet. We read the Children of Time series, which is the first 3 books. And, well, there aren't any more published yet, but we know that more are going to come out. So all the way up to Children of Memory. And then we read several standalones, Embassy Town by China Mieville, the Red Spirits by John Scalzi, Wind Up Girl by Paolo Bacigalupi, and the fourth one is not a standalone, Parable of the Soul. We read the first book of that duology. So this is the collection that we're going to be choosing our favorites from. Who wants to go first?
Mm-hmm. Well, I seen Jared at 4, so he better go first because I only get 3.
You want me to go first? Okay. All right. So, well, shall we count down or?
Yeah, count down. It's more exciting.
All right. At number 3 for novels. We're doing novels first. My number 3 for the year was Annihilation by Jeff Vanderveer. I thought that was a fantastic viewpoint. I thought it was a fantastic use of the naming conventions, and I really liked the mystery of it, and I liked how you didn't get all the answers, but you still kind of felt satisfied with the story as it was, and it felt like it could have been a standalone, even though there were a lot more answers in the books afterwards. I still felt that this one really stood above the rest and on its own, and I just like how he pulled it off. And it was, and not only that, but it was the prose was very easy flowing. It was quick to read, enjoyable, and but yet not dumbed down in any manner whatsoever. It was thoughtful, and it brought up a lot of interesting questions about life and how it works, and so Annihilation really did it for me at number 3 for the year. Yeah.
Excellent. Chris, do you want to state your number 3? Same. Okay.
As well. And that's just my number 3 as well. For many of the same reasons as Jared pointed out. It's a big old puzzle box. I mean, the whole series is a puzzle box of what the hell's going on and why things are like they certainly are. But it is within the context of this kind of alien, alternate dimension kind of thing, but it's sort of like an allegory for like ecological disaster in some ways, and sort of has that as its background, like a lot of the books that we sort of touched on this year in some ways, but without ever kind of saying, "Oh, mankind's terrible for doing this to our planet," kind of thing. It's just much more interesting than that. And the only other thing I'll add to what Jared quite nicely said is I think it's just beautifully written as well. It is like the detail in the prose, while it's not easy to read, it's like encompassing. It just sort of fits the world and puts you in that place almost perfectly from the moment that you start reading it, and for that reason, I was so excited. And to be honest, I often think if we hadn't got off such a strong start, maybe we would have lasted about 2 episodes.
2 episodes, so none of the standalones or Children of Time.
Well, if we'd have started off with, say, let me not be a hater. If we'd have started off with,
No, be a hater. Do it. I can't be the only one.
okay, if we'd have started off with the Wind-Up Girl, which I didn't really love, I don't know if we would have had impetus to kind of keep on pushing forward in the same way. Whereas we started off, once we decided to go to novels, we started off with like an absolute banger. There's no doubt about that. It's absolutely like every time we came around for discussion, not only were the discussions amazing, but I couldn't wait to be finished them so that I could read the next little section of it every week. And I think that kind of got us off on a very good footing for the first 3 books, especially to kind of go, oh God, this is just the greatest thing. It was just so exciting every week to just finish those conversations and go, right, what's going to happen next? And be wrong.
Yeah. The books did make for some excellent conversation. Steve.
Definitely did. All right, so my third book is not Annihilation. Spoiler alert.
Wrong,
It is
you say?
close. It's Authority.
Oh, interesting.
So Authority is my number 3. I really like without giving away any spoilers for someone who hasn't read the trilogy, it does take, it is a big departure. Well, it's a different focus, I guess, than the first book. It's not easy to do. It's kind of takes courage to go from a book that's, I'm assuming it was very well received, and give a completely different perspective. I'm trying really hard to spoil the second book, but it really builds on what the first one did in a really clever way. It raises more questions, and in a very Lost-esque kind of way.
Yes.
But I just eat that stuff up. I just love that kind of stuff. And it's done very, very, in a very clever way. Very, very cool. So I did like the different perspectives and the way the world continues to build. And I just thought it was a really fun time. And like both of you had mentioned, this is just a great series to start off the podcast with. It's just led to some really great conversation. All these different questions. It was fun to guess, and all these different ideas on what could or couldn't be happening. And I don't know, it was a blast. So Authority is my number 3.
Nice.
Nice. My number 3 is Parable of the Sower, which is the book we read most recently for the podcast, and I think the episodes will come out maybe after this episode goes up. But yeah, I think we've read a few post-apocalyptic novels over the year across some different reading groups, and I think we did The Road, we did Earthabites, and this one felt like a little bit of a mishmash of both, with some fantastic characters, some excellent relationships, and it's just a great story overall about survival. But also, I think having read the first 100 pages of the next book, Parable of the Talents, what it has set up in terms of the religion that is being formed there, I think, yeah, it makes for some great exploration of the starting of a new religion and what that can mean to the various people who start it, who follow it, and so on, and the impact that it has on their families and friends. So, yeah, Parable of the Sower, number 3 for me. 2.
Recency bias? Are any of you concerned about
Maybe.
recency bias?
I wonder, and this would be like a peek behind the curtain for other people. I wonder if the fact that we have started Parable of Talents has enhanced your appreciation of Parable of the Sower even a bit more, because that's one of the things I was fighting with, because Parable of the Sower nearly made my number 3, but it sort of went, if I sort of have to exclude the 100 pages that I've read of Parable of the Talents to kind of do that, and that's almost impossible to do. Like, that's not a criticism at all, although it doesn't make me say that. There you go, first one Varsha got wrong. There you go. Just in fun, obviously.
That's fair, but also I think when I made my list, I hadn't started Parable of the Talents yet, but
Aha! I was going to ask that.
it
Yeah.
does make me want to push up Parable of the Sword to maybe the second. I suspect if I finish the second book, I might make Parable of the Sword the second book in my list instead of the third. Because we'll talk about it when we get to the other two books, but this I really appreciated and I loved even, but not in the clutch the book to my chest and call it
Yeah.
my favorite sort of way, like the others did. Well, actually, only one of them did that, but we'll see.
I think what's interesting, because you obviously mentioned that it's sort of a mishmash of The Road and Earth Abides and this. They all sort of, it's not like even a mismatch. They all fall within the same kind of idea, and the same sort of things that it's trying to do. And I think, like, when I was trying to put my top three together, I came down to the fact that I actually like those other two books a bit more, I think, than Parable of Sword. And I really enjoyed Parable of Sword, but out of those kind of three, it's a close three because they're all great, but it's definitely my least favorite of those three, for sure.
Yeah.
And that may have to do with if I read Parallel of the Sword first, actually, out of them. I may have liked it the most, it might be just the order in which I read them.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't think the order in which we read books, or even though the authors didn't write them in that order, it might feel like in our heads this came first and this did it better. So yeah.
Like what one's riffing on another one, even though it was written before.
Yeah, exactly. Time travel. That's what science fiction is for.
Yeah. Well, that's what makes perception so key to everything that we read and we do. That's why it's great rereading stuff 20 years later, because you have a completely different perception going into it, and so that's what makes me reading fun. Is what you bring to it.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I like that. Book 2.
All right, number 2 for me was Children of Memory by Adrian Tchaikovsky, the third book in the children's series. And I chose that one over Children of Time because I just love the Corvids. Plain and simple. I just love what he did with those creatures. I love how he integrated in storytelling as the major theme of the book, and storytelling is as the kind of the thing that brings everybody together. And it's the thing that makes that determines sentience. It's the thing that determines consciousness, and it's the thing that determines evolution and adaptation and everything about being human and beyond. And I just thought he did a great job of utilizing the meta aspect of storytelling as the vehicle for his story, and I really enjoyed it.
Yeah, it definitely played with the whole idea of storytelling. The timelines seem to be different versions of a story, if you know what I mean, and then how that fit together at the end was very much the culmination of the book, and made it really fun for that reason.
Yeah. And with that in mind, I didn't think, whether you like the ending of the book or not, I think every aspect leading up to it was enjoyable. In its own way. And I mean, I did like the ending, and so that that's why the book's rated as high as it is. But but I can understand if other people didn't like it, depending upon how you look at the story or your taste. But I think you can enjoy every storytelling aspect of the book and how he weaves in mythologies, and which were the beginnings of humankind storytelling, was mythologies and stuff like that. And so it's just, I thought it all just, I thought he really upped his game compared to Children of Ruin, and I thought it was very well done.
Yes.
Nice.
My number 2.
Mm-hmm.
Children of Time. on children
Yeah.
memory. I think I just genuinely so I think actually the difference between these two books comes down to which characters you've resonated more. You kind of said the Corvids alongside everything that's going on, and I sort of like the human versus the spider colony kind of thing. That kind of bit where humanity is almost the bad guy, and basically trying to this kind of ideas of colonialism, etc., that came up in multiple reads we did this year as well. These kind of themes. I sort of liked the painting of like F those humans. You know, I like that kind of the way that it was painted because my perceptions before I started the series were that, oh my god, I'm going to struggle to read about spiders. Oh, I don't like spiders. This is going to be a problem for me. Whereas it didn't take too long before I was like, you know, the spiders are the good guys. And actually seeing how things evolve, I really like that side of science fiction storytelling as well. You know, evolution kind of throughout a long period of time. It's not a perfect book. I think it's a bit more Hollywood than I thought it was. I thought it was going to be a bit heavier science fiction wise than what it was, although it has loads of like heavy science fiction ideas inside it, but it was, you know, there was definitely a lot of action and things that happened in it. A bit like you said, I don't know if I love the ending of it necessarily, but everything leading up to that was, I just thought was a lot of fun. And it was, again, another one of those books I couldn't wait to read the next section. Very easy to read, this one, and very easy to make my way through. And yeah, Children of Time. I can see why it's so lauded. I can see why the series is so lauded.
My turn.
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, Children of Time is my number 2 favorite. Just what both of you kind of mentioned about the series is the first book. I especially like the evolution and the kind of being on the front steps of humanity exploring without giving too many spoilers. The initial setup I really like too, with kind of humanity trying to find new homes and trying to expand and colonize, and the way that things work out the way they did. And I did like the saboteur portion of that without giving away too much. I did like that. I did like the way that the spiders evolve and all the different phases and the way that they could go from spiders to what they became. But I'm not huge on the ending, but it's still good enough to make my top 2. So pretty good stuff. And I feel like it explored a lot of fun ideas, and it's there to explore, but it's not overt about all the ideas that it explores. So and I like how it interweaves actual spider behaviors and things that spiders do into this science fiction world. That was really neat. So I wish maybe one day we'll get to ask Tchaikovsky about how much research he put into spiders writing that book, and how much how much he was concerned about it being accurate to what spiders really do. But yeah.
My number 2 is Children of Memory, but for slightly different reasons than Jared. I do love the Corvids. I do.
Well, Tchaikovsky took the whole number 2 slot.
Yeah, exactly. I like that. Except children. Chris is shaking his head because it's we picked
It's a
Children of
wrong answer.
Memory and not Children of Time. Yeah, so I really like the questions that this book raised around the nature of consciousness and what's real and what's not. The questions that it asks around whether imitation is the same as being another person, which I think had started a little bit in the second book, but came to a full fruition in the third book. And I just love the mystery aspects of it. I keep harping on about how I don't like mysteries, but it's just murder mysteries I don't like. I like mysteries when they are like this one and the one in Annihilation. So yeah, number 2. And the characters. I love the first 2 books, but there weren't any characters that I really latched on to. But Liv could go down in my list of favorite characters of all time. So I even remember her name. That's how much I like her.
It's incredible. I did not remember her name. Portia, I think, is the only name
Yeah.
and Karen is the only names that I remember from the entire series. There's a
Karen,
lot of
yeah.
Kern.
Yeah.
But it's no small feat to remember characters considering how many
Yeah.
books we read. But so that's
Yeah. And the number 1 slot goes to.
My number one goes to Parable of the Sower.
Ah,
I really love this book. I like what she did with it. I think her writing is exquisite. I think her prose is so well done. And it's so I think her character that she developed for this novel is so unique and so different than just about any other character I've ever read. I think she really takes the cake there as far as developing a first-person character that you can be invested in as you're moving along, but is so different from you, the reader, but yet you still get inside her head and still, see what she sees. And I think she did it in a way that you still got a really great understanding of the characters around her and how the characters around her may feel differently than what she does. And she's not, it's not portrayed in a perfectly herself lens in the manner of, she's always right and stuff like that. You can tell that she makes wrong decisions, even though she doesn't want to admit it, but she does. And so I just love how that comes out in Butler's writing. And I love, and I really love how her post-apocalyptic world isn't quite there yet. We are actually seeing how it becomes a post-apocalyptic world, how it becomes this world, and it makes it more horrifying, I think, in that manner, because you're seeing what we may be seeing right now in the real world. And so the things that she predicted is eerie, and it's scary, and it's beautiful in how she presents it. And it's just you could almost say sublime, and it's just, I thought it was just so well done, and I really enjoyed how she pulled it off. I wasn't expecting this level because like I said before, I read the graphic novel last year, and the graphic novel was good, but there was, I think, a slight disconnect between reading her prose and then looking at a picture of it, whereas being completely immersed in her prose really, I think, did it for me a bit more, which I can't say for all stuff like that. I can say it in this case. And it also may be the fact that I could reread this without feeling like I was repeating myself. And so it was that well done for me. So that's why it made my number one.
excellent choice.
Very nice. Chris.
And eloquently stated. I'll forgive you that one because it is quite brilliant. But my number one is Authority. I loved Authority. You put it very nicely, Steve. I have to say, I don't actually have an awful lot to add to what you had. It has that lost kind of feeling of, after the first book, getting you so invested in what's going on in that part of the world, and it's like the most important thing in the world. And then by the time the second book starts and we see a slightly different perspective of it, you're like, I don't give a shit about that stuff. This shit here is way more exciting than the stuff that happened in the first book, even though I couldn't sleep for days thinking about that. That's what happened here. And I loved the central character, actually, the whole way, and in the acceptance as well. I just loved his viewpoint. From being somebody that was a bit like the reader, trying to make sense of everything, but being a bit more aware of stuff than the character in the first book. The first book, the character is, we're looking at the outside going, oh, you're not seeing this right, you don't know what's compromised about yourself. In the second one, the second character is very much aware of what he doesn't know, and how much he still has to know. And I love that ride with that person to kind of discover what the hell was going on, and then having some of the times of just some of the scenes and that, like, again, peek behind the curtain, making the thumbnails for Authority was the most fun, because shit, happened every week that you're like, oh, that's going to make a great scene every week. And yeah, Authority, I just thought it was an awful lot of fun. I mean, I just love the whole Southern Reach trilogy. I can't wait to get the Absolution. I just think the whole series is kind of special, not just because of style of storytelling, but because it's so wonderfully written and immersive the whole way through.
What about the button and the hatch?
With the button on the hatch and the smoke monster and
Yeah.
everything, it is definitely that type of book. There is no doubt about that, and it may frustrate an awful lot of readers. I think it's a very valid criticism of the book and the series to kind of say, oh, it does that last thing, and it definitely does, but that doesn't make it any less fun to read week on week, especially for how we read these stories of doing like these 100-page chunks every week of kind of and then being made to stop because Varsha's watching you, you know, even though she's already read what's happened week on week, you know, whenever their little plot summaries, but we're not allowed to continue on forward, and it's sort of fitted our reading patterns perfectly in that regard, and I think that's one of the reasons it resonates so well with me.
Steve.
Yeah. So my number one, and it won't be a surprise to Jared for sure, but my number one is Annihilation. Is one of it made my top 10 of the year, and I just love the characters. I love the setup. I love the mysteries. I love the world. It all works, and it's you could fly through this book. It was a book you can read very quickly, but I'm glad that we read it the way that we did because we had time to come and throw ideas around and what does this mean and what about what she said here and what does that mean, and all of it was just fantastic, and the character work especially was just beautiful. I just loved all the different characters and the way that they all fit certain archetypes and all the from start to finish, a stellar book. And yeah, I'm like Chris had mentioned, I'm glad we started with something like this trilogy because it was a great way for us to start kind of throwing ideas around and just a good conversation. So yeah, Annihilation is my number one for speculative speculations.
Nice.
So you're saying Vasha making us stop is a good thing?
Whatever
Never thought
Vasha
I'd say
makes you
that.
do is a good thing.
Yeah. See that, Vasha? I'm on your side. Never put me in number 3 again.
I was
He's
going to
from
say,
he's
this has affected Jared in ways that, yeah.
Thank you, Jared. What was I going to say? Yes, so Dan couldn't be here tonight, but he did send us his favorite because he didn't get the memo about 3 favorites, but he also picked Annihilation and Parable of the Sower. He put 2 in his top
Nice.
of the year, which brings me to mine, is also Annihilation, for all the reasons that you all mentioned. My biggest reason, though, is once again the mystery, because like the top 2 books on this list are the mystery and things that really engage me and make me question the nature of what's going on. I think I found out through these books that we read this year that I love. And Annihilation, a little bit special because it was the first books that we started this series with, and how much I engaged with this book, how many theories we brought every single week for discussion. I think I can't remember any other book that I've engaged with in quite that manner. Authority and Acceptance, yes, but they sort of followed on the foundation that Annihilation laid. So for all those reasons, Annihilation is my favorite.
Nice.
Outstanding.
Yeah, that's stunning.
So Jared and I have the reverse of each other's list, and Steve and Chris have the reverse of each
Reverse
other's
of each
list.
other. Isn't that so interesting? I think one of the things to say about the 11 books that we have read, and it's probably worth saying, I discovered an awful lot about my tastes, especially in comparison to the others, about what I like and especially when we come to do these wrap ups, when I can sort of predict what other people's favorite books are going to be, and vice versa, I'm sure. But actually, the kind of things that I would have said that I really enjoy the books aren't actually the things when it came down to my favourites that I really did love. Maybe in the
Mm.
same way I maybe understood myself a little more. And I think that's you said it whether we're recording or not earlier on, Jared. And so far, it's one of the reasons you read so many books in general. It's like every book that you read informs yourself a little more about yourself, not just about whether you enjoyed a book or whatever. It kind of informs you about who you are as a person. And I think that definitely was true this year.
Yeah. Yeah, I wanted to like the Wind-Up Girl more, but it just didn't quite get there. And the same thing with Embassy Town. I wanted to like that even more, but it just didn't quite pull off what these other ones did, you know?
Yeah. They were nearly there. I mean, they did a lot of the things that I generally love about the world building in both those books is kind of
The world
exceptional
building's
in a lot of ways.
outstanding in both those, yeah.
It's probably, incredible world building, but it doesn't have either the characters or really the overarching themes and the messaging that it has. It doesn't close the loop as well as some of the top 3 books that we've discussed this in this sort of list. It doesn't give you the sense of that's what that makes me feel very definitely about that person or about that situation in the same way as some of the other ones did. And like I love so much of Embassy Town, I love so much of Wind Up Girl, and even Bed Shirts. I don't think it's going to be anybody's. Oh, it is the Hugo Award winning book out of all of this lot. But anyway, it was fun. I mean, it was just stupid fun. It wasn't the type of book that I kind of went, oh, I can't wait to read the next section. But it was easy reading week on week to kind of go, oh, right, okay. It was much more of a satire.
Yeah, it was a good break book, right? And that
Was.
brought us back to Children of Memory, and yeah, it was a nice shift in direction from where we were with the trilogies. And that's the other thing we learn sometimes. It's nice to take a break from a trilogy so you can appreciate the book more when you come back to it. Are we ready to do short stories? Do we have 3 each, or
Just want
just
to
one?
mention really quickly, but I
Mhm.
think, well, this might be a bad time to mention this, but Tom Jones was the best picture of 1963, and it reminded me a lot of Red Shirts. Just kind of out of the blue, but yeah. So there's a parallel there between
Yeah, that's good.
Tom Jones, which is like a British comedy that you would never expect to be an Oscar award winner,
Yeah,
Best Picture. So it did remind me of Red Shirts, but
it's a very good
I mean,
point.
like we mentioned in that, we mentioned earlier that sometimes there's a certain narrative and a certain, energy and certain momentum for certain people or movies or books or whatever that it just carries them in that moment. So
Yeah.
Absolutely.
All right.
Okay, short stories. I hadn't prepared 3, but I've got 3 now.
Okay. Fair enough. I
Yeah.
also wasn't prepared last week, but since Jared asked, I then looked through my list, and now I have a list of 3 short stories. Should we just call out all 3
Yeah,
instead
yeah.
of doing
Yeah,
the
yeah,
quick,
okay.
yeah, okay. Okay.
All right, so, and these are just off the top of my head. I didn't go through the list or anything. I was like, if I can't remember it, then I guess it's not in my top 3. And so, I have one, The Martian by Ray Bradbury.
Mm-hmm.
I really enjoyed that one. I liked his contrast of an alien trying to become human, and I thought that was really cool. I liked how he did it. How he did it. And number 2 was Nightfall by Isaac Asimov.
Mm-hmm.
That was one of the earlier ones we read, and it still stuck with me after all that time. And I really thought that was pretty cool how he had that little end of the world scenario in there. And number 3, which I was so surprised that this stuck with me after all this time, but it did. It didn't go away. Hell is the Absence of God by Ted Chiang. That was the only story I really loved out of that book, and it stuck with me. The rest of the stories in that book I couldn't care less about, but that one stuck with me.
Interesting. I was so sure we wouldn't see any Ted Chiang on here today, so yeah.
I really liked it. I liked all the questions that it brought up, and I just like his presentation in that one.
Nice.
Yeah.
What
Right,
about
mine?
you, Chris?
Okay.
Mhm.
Well, my number 3 is a bit of a cheat because it's not so much about this story, but because we read the rest of them. It is Game of Rat and Dragon, right, is my number 3, more because of how it fit into the greater Corby Smith universe. And I can't separate the fact that I did read a lot of the rest of those stories this year, and the madness, the absolute madness of that man's brain is to be celebrated. And
If I had to guess, I would have guessed you would have had that.
I Game Rat and Dragon. Now, I have to say, Game Rat and Dragon, I didn't love within the entire collection, but it just resonates so much with the rest of that collection. And because I'm not going to have Cordwainer Smith in my top books of the year, I have to celebrate it in some way because it was an impactful book this year. And it turned 180 from being, oh my god, that sucks, to being, there's something else going on here that I haven't really been appreciating or haven't been smart enough to get. The second one, and you're going to have to forgive me because I remember none of the names of these. This might have been Surface Tension. I was sort of looking back and through. So this is the one where the alien space station, the people are in separate rooms, right? And the human is feeding off the feeling
Oh.
of the alien
Yeah,
in the
Surface
space station.
Tension was the James Blish one. This one was something with the word station in it, I think.
Oh, yes, it might have been, yes.
Yeah.
Let me just look that up. So,
Let me see. I think it
um,
was Stranger Station or something like
Stranger Station, it might have been indeed. Yes, Stranger Station by Damon
that.
Knight.
Strange.
So that one, yes, again, that feeling, it reminded me of Alien. It reminded me of Battlestar Galactica. It reminded me of lots of things, and it resonated in that. But it had this idea of this person, again, a bit of a puzzle box insofar as he's trying to work out what the hell's going on by the use of a computer AI that's there to guide him. And then we eventually find out. And my number one favorite story of them all, again, not sure if I know the name of it. It is the one where you have, it might have been The Martian. It might have been The Martian, where the thing shapeshifts. It's the shapeshifter that's trying to make everybody happy.
Mm.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
Yeah,
That's
the
the
one.
Martian. Yeah, that's
Yep.
the Martian. That's when you were saying that.
That's my number one too.
that
Ray
was- that-
Bradbury. Yeah.
Yeah, Ray Bradbury. That story is just brilliant. Just about, and again, says an awful lot about human nature and says an awful lot about how selfish people are, especially within struggling climates and all the rest of it. That's
Oh, yeah.
that. I thought that story was brilliant.
It had mob mentality. It had It had it all. It makes me want to read some more Bradbury. In the
Bradbury.
future,
Yeah,
so,
yeah, for sure.
All right, my 3. The first one, I think I'm not sure if this is because it was the first story in the book, in the collection, but it's The Star by H.G. Wells.
Mhm.
I do have The Last Question by Isaac Asimov, and it made me want to read more Isaac Asimov. And this one, I can't stop thinking about. I still think about it, and I want to read more, and I'm going to butcher the title. Tian Ukbar Orbis
Yes.
something, yeah, by I'm sorry, I'm mispronouncing the names, but
Nailed it.
it took me a couple times to read it, and I'm gonna have to read it more to get it, but it's so thought provoking, and
Yeah.
I still think about it. I want to read more of their work too. So yeah, that was the by far the standout. But so many great stories, even the bad ones
Yeah.
were good.
Yeah, no, yeah, it's a good book. It's the big book of science fiction. It's a lot of great stuff in it.
And I love that we're going in chronological order. When we first started, I wished it was not in chronological order, but turns out it was a really, really good idea to do that. I love going through the years and seeing how the stories will fit a certain time period, or the stories have evolved over time, and how the stories influence each other now that we're getting farther in. So yeah, all really great stuff. It's really fascinating to go down and kind of relive certain time periods and see how those stories would fit today, or if they would even fit at all. But
Good point. Yeah.
good stuff.
My top 3 stories of your life and others by Ted Chiang. Well, actually, that's sort of an honorable mention. I did like, no, not and the others, but just the story of your life.
Story of your life. Yeah, the Arrival
I
story.
liked
Yeah.
that's more of an honorable mention because I have 3. No, okay. Story of your life and others will be number 3. Nightfall, I kind of want to briefly mention. It's a reread, but I have been thinking about it for the 10 years since I last read it, and we read again for speculative speculation. So that has been one of my favorite short stories. But and I did reread The Last Question, but that's my number 2 because I didn't remember that I had read it before. I only remember it when we got to the end. So I loved The Last Question and the ending of it mainly. And The Story of Your Life, I think the story was less good than, or I liked it less than I probably would have if I hadn't seen the movie first. So, but in isolation, I think it's a great story, and the stuff that it deals with and the ideas in it are pretty brilliant. And yeah, my number 1 story, just like Steve, is Lon Akbar or Tertius by Borges. Yes.
Show off.
Yeah, I know. I've been practicing up for weeks.
Well, I go to Livia's discussion group for the Borges short stories, right? We've done 4. Um, yeah, this was one of them too. So
Yes, it was.
I think this was an interesting back-to-back discussion thing we did for this particular short story. We read it for Speculative Speculation, and then a week and a half later, we were talking about it on Livia's channel too. So, but yes, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say an honourable mention, I think, for the Ursula K. Le Guin, The Ones Who Walk Away from Ominous as well, which actually we read as part of a Steve sprint, which sort of set the idea for this podcast in an awful lot of ways and kind of putting it together. I don't know if that was probably last year, anyway, was it, Steve?
I think so.
It was like 2 years ago, I think.
2 years ago, yeah. So, I mean, that was sort of the inspiration. It shows how time flies. I was so much younger back then. But that's another one that has sort of stuck with me as well because it was very impactful, and reading it with a group then was cool.
We haven't read a Le Guin short story in this one yet, right? Okay.
Not
I hope there is one. But yeah, these are all kind of like my candidate favorites. Anyway, like all these stories have exactly the kind of thing that I like in a science fiction story, and especially short stories. But I like some of the ones that you guys mentioned too, like The Martian, and what was the one with the communist agenda? The Destruction of Doom City or something?
Oh yeah, the Principal City was it? Or yeah.
Principal City, the Doom of Principal City or something.
That
was,
I mentioned that one myself. I was like, okay,
that was a really good one.
Yeah, both of the Star stories were good. The H.G. Wells and the Arthur C. Clarke one.
Yeah.
Yes.
There was also one that I remember reading at the time. It was the horror one, Let Me in This House or something, or whatever that one.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
I couldn't remember the details of it, and I thought that means it's not my top 3. I remember reading it at the time and going, I so enjoyed that. It's such an unusual, like, horror type title. I thought, I wonder what that's like. And reading it and going, that was a lot of fun, but I can't remember what it was about. So
Let Me Live in a House.
Let Me in the House or something. It was something like that. I don't know.
Yeah, good stuff. I like it. I did like most of the short stories. The ones that I did not like were because they suddenly turned into these action, and they tended to be long to turn into this big action sequence out of nowhere. But that was it. That's usually my only complaint about these. They turn into action sequences out of nowhere. But in terms of ideas, I think the stuff that they discuss and explore is pretty excellent. Cool. Any other closing thoughts or any other... Oh, sorry. I had one more that we should maybe discuss. How many of the top 3 made it to your top 10? Is it just a speculative speculations top 3, or did they make your favorites of the year too?
Annihilation made my top 10, but
yeah, Authority made my top 10.
No.
Nice.
Nope.
Authority. None? Interesting.
Parable of the Sower I gave honorable mention because I read it before, but but yeah,
What about yours, Fortune?
Children of Memory and Annihilation, I think, made my favorites of the year.
Interesting.
Yeah. I loved Children of Memory. I loved it deeply.
Yeah.
And Annihilation was just a very excellent book. So.
Yeah, I think it's worth saying, if anybody has made it this far and has been listening along with us week after week, Well, we kind of started off this idea of doing a sci-fi podcast every week. Well, I say we, because Varsha's idea. Kind of thought all being a way to get through a lot of sci-fi books, reading it together, because this is a reading group that we obviously like. But it has transformed from that into being like the hub at the center of my week in a lot of ways, and it has become like Friday night. For me, it's a lot later than for everybody else. It's become this bit where I've had a crap week. I'm just going to get to hang and talk about, these cool stories more so than anything else. And if anybody else is thinking of doing or creating a reading group a bit like similar, you definitely should do it, because it's been one of the best things happened this year. So
I agree.
Yeah, same. Highlight
Cheers.
of my week every week. Cheers.
And I get the drink not alone, theoretically.
True. I don't have a problem because I'm drinking with people.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Yeah, be careful. I almost spit up on my keyboard.
Oh, dear. Can't be.
Oh.
Do you drink alone? No.
No, I don't. I mean, the other people who drink with me are thousands of miles away, but it's fine.
It still counts.
Still
They're in a
counts.
screen. They're my friends.
Welcome,
Yeah.
welcome to the future. Yeah.
Dear.
Excellent. So, end of year one. We'll hopefully get to the end of year two, as long as we pick some good books that we want to keep reading. But we, of course, love hanging out together, so we'll find a way. Yes. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see everybody in a week, I think, with whatever I post next. Probably Parable of the Sower or Parable of the Talents, depending on when I decide to post this episode. But Octavia E. Butler is coming up regardless. Yeah, and thank you for your support. Bye.